All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the All Souls Community Forum coming from All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church in Kansas City. I'm Joe Robertson, a member of this church and also a member of the Forum Committee, a forum that for more than 75 years has sought out important conversations promoting critical thinking on the most compelling and challenging issues of our day. Today, we ask the question, how can white supremacists be stopped? And that's with Leonard Zeskin, an author and activist who has spent more than 40 years on the front lines in this struggle that now features Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and the insurrection on the nation's capital. Leonard is the author of Blood and Politics, the history of white nationalism from the margins to the mainstream. And he is a founder of the nationally known Institute for Research and Education of Human Rights. So thank you for joining us, Leonard, and welcome to the forum.
Hi. My name is Leonard Zeskin. I'm from the Institute for Research and Education on Human Rights. Our website is www.irehr.org. That is, you might want to write this down. That is irehr.org. You can send me hate mail. I want to thank Joe Robertson and Renee Price for their help with this program, and I'm very glad to be here with you today. The last time I spoke at this forum, I think it was early 2020, I was asked to talk about the racial and demographic polarization in our society. That, unfortunately, has stayed very present. In fact, it is worse now today than it once was. So today, I'm going to try and give you a snapshot picture of where the white supremacist movement stands in our society and what we can do about it. Let me give you a hint. It is much worse today than at any point since I started monitoring the white supremacists in 1979. Let me begin with Charlottesville, Virginia. A 2017 Charlottesville rally grew out of a broad movement to defend Confederate statues. The campaign to unseat these statues had picked up steam in the last several years. They had been originally erected by the Daughters of the Confederacy in the 1890s to promote the virtues of Jim Crow segregation. Today, a broad-based anti-racism campaign was taking on racist police killings, Confederate statues, pushing against the newly installed limits on voting rights, and the defendants said they launched the Unite the Right rallies to defend the statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. There was violence at the August 2017 events in Charlottesville, Virginia, most notably the murder of Heather Heyer and the wounding of several others when Alex Fields drove his vehicle into the crowd of anti-racist counter-protesters. And there were several other incidents over the weekend, including a Friday night torchlight parade through the university campus. On October 28th, more than 4 years after the infamous Unite the Right rally in Virginia, long-awaited trial for 10 white nationalists and 14 individuals began. 14 corporations began. No one from the West Coast American Freedom Party was a defendant. Neither was David Duke or Don Black. Nevertheless, the defendants' list read like a virtual who's who of the National Socialist, that means neo-Nazi, National Socialist wing of the white nationalist movement. Jason Kessler, the local organizer of the whitest rally, had been a Proud Boys member, and that organization, though not Kessler, had an outside role in the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol building. Let me just say, the name of the Nazi party was National Socialist German Workers' Party. National Socialist German Workers. Richard Spencer, the one-time leader of the National Policy Institute, was one of the bear fish in Charlottesville. He developed the word alt-right, which is a marketing term. That's all it is. to describe his movement and further obscure its connection to white power protests. His National Policy Institute, which was not a defendant in the case, was ordered by an Ohio court to pay $2.4 million fine in a separate legal case. He represented himself at this trial. The League of the South, its president, Michael Hill, and his chief of staff, Michael Tubbs, were all three defendants. Hill, with a PhD in history, taught British history at historically Black Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Under his leadership, the League became more activist and less sedentary. Tubbs enlisted in the U.S. Army in the 1980s and won admission to the Special Forces. But his white supremacist activism at the time caused him to be thrown in jail for several years. When released, he joined the League of the South and became its Florida chairman. He is a believer in the racist and anti-Semitic Christian identity version of Christianity. If you want to know about Christian identity, read my book. It's in there. It's a fat book. And you can get it from the Institute. The Traditional Workers' Party, its one-time chairman, Matthew Heimbach and Matthew Perot, were also three significant defendants. Heimbach was an active white supremacist while still in college in Maryland, and Perot was affiliated with the Traditional Youth Movement, all three steeped in 1930s fascist ideologies. And National Socialist Movement, and Spiniffer Jess Shope were both defendants. Shope has stepped down as leader of the group and claims he no longer believes in neo-Nazi tenets that have led the National Socialist Movement to march everywhere and anytime, including in KC downtown a couple of years ago. He is one of the defendants that has found it difficult to comply with plaintiffs' discovery motions, getting himself and his organization in trouble. Identity Europa. Nathan Domingo is founder, and its member Elliot Klein, who used the name Eli Mosley, are also three defendants, as are Vanguard America and James Alex Field, the driver of the car that plowed into a group of anti-racists, killing Heather Heyer, including multiple others. Also, a couple of Klan groups and propaganda outfits accused. The verdict earlier this month was a victory for our side. Every organization and individual was hit with substantial, and I mean substantial, monetary damages under state charges. There's going to be a fight over this. Damages that might put several of them out of business for a long time. That is very good, in my opinion. We did not win the federal conspiracy charges, however. So that's the stuff in Charlottesville. A bad mark for the other side. Let us all go to the January 6th riot inside the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. An outfit at George Washington University is keeping track of all the individuals charged in this case. And the Kansas City Star has done a very good job, particularly of the ones charged in the Missouri and the Kansas area. We can thank Judy Thomas for that, reporter Judy Thomas. The average age of those arrested is 39 years old. Individuals come from 45 states and the District of Columbia. More than 700 have been arrested. Cases have been brought up against 612 men and 91 women. Largest numbers came from Florida, Pennsylvania, and Texas, but we had some from right here, Kansas City area. The majority were charged in part using evidence from their social community, from their social media. 81% had military experience. 151 have pleaded guilty, and the sentences have tended to be light so far. Only recently did one of them get 5 years in jail. Now, at the time that this all occurred, I wrote an op-ed piece for the Kansas City Star last year for this, yeah, I don't know, uh, early this year, in which I pointed out that outsized roles of the Oath Keepers militia and the Proud Boys played in the events of January 6th. Members of those organizations still face serious conspiracy charges. The Oath Keepers have lost members, going from about 30,000 members to 7,500. The Proud Boys have lost their national leaderships and today are operating solely under local control. Some have gotten more radical, some not. All of them are not in Trump's back pocket. This is not a Trump operation. These guys had their own goals, and they mock Trump. They mock him along with everyone else. Now, the Attorney General for Washington, D.C. is suing both the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers under the 1871 Anti-Klan Act. And that's a good thing, I think. There will be some vigorous defenses in these cases, and the outcome is not predetermined. And the government has a history. The outcome of these is not predetermined, but the white movement has suffered greatly from the events in Charlottesville and Washington, D.C. At the same time, let us consider other organizations, particularly in the militias, that have grown very rapidly, very rapidly. Consider the People's Rights Network. This credible militia on the Oregon-Idaho border. The principals had involved in a takeover of federal lands. This is not a rare occurrence in the West. But they convened a meeting in April of 2020, less than 2 years ago. They had about 24 individuals show up. They bragged about having a mailing list of 300. Today, there are 33,431 individuals who are members. They run a tight ship, divided into states, regions, and city chapters, each with its own leaders. Many of the intermediate and national leaders are women, a rare occurrence for an organization steeped in this is a militia culture. In Missouri, they have more than 360 members. In the immediate Kansas City, Missouri area and the suburbs, they have about 70 members. In the Springfield, Southwest Missouri corner of the state, there are 120 members. They got a problem. And they have about 28 in Columbia and Boonville. Now, how long have they grown so fast and furious? Well, simply by getting involved in what might usefully be called the COVID denial movement against vaccine, masks, and regulations. And they are cutting turf, like the Proud Boys, for others. They're cutting turf for others, like the Proud Boys. They're putting their guns away, putting the paramilitary training on the back burner, and doing some old-fashioned organizing. Stuff that you should have been doing from the other side, quite frankly. They've been involved, and there was a demonstration down at the Capitol, and you can read about it on our website, www.irehr.org. There was an organization that said, in which a guy shows up with a big paramilitary weapon on his T-shirt. It said, unvaccinated but protected. That's the kind of stuff that's going on out there. And they're, so, not good. We are about to lose our reproductive rights. We're about to lose once again on voting rights. Not good. And we are losing our own language. They've appropriated the women's movement language about our body, controlling our bodies and our power for the anti-vax movement. And we've got to fight that. Because when they start talking like we do, People's Rights Network could be one of our organizations. When they start talking like we do, the line gets very thin. The line gets very thin. Now, I'd like to point out something that is fairly important in the scheme of things. At the turn of the century, the Kansas City Star asked me to predict what was going to happen in this century. I said that we were going to have a fight because white people were going to become a minority in a nation of minorities. And they weren't going to, majority of white people were not going to put up with that. Well, that's what's going on. That we're in the front stages of that, and it's going to get much worse. So there is wide spread and still growing belief that white people are being dispossessed and going after their fathers as white people. They're being dispossessed as white people. This belief is central to the white supremacist argument. Since the gains of the broadly defined civil rights movement, this movement has believed that white people are superior, but they're being held down. Jews are doing it. Black people are holding them down. And as this movement has grown and matured, this belief has spread. Now we are witnessing a attempted rollback in voting rights. Simply, they're going to turn Wyandotte County into District 1 in Kansas, be with all the Western states. And there's a headline in today's New York Times that the Black districts are being systematically put out of business by the Republicans. All right. Now we are witnessing an attempted rollback of voting rights. White people will quite soon actually be a voting bloc that's a minority in most places. They don't know how to get along with others. We are witnessing an attempted rollback of actual history teaching in the junior and senior high schools, so that white people will not feel so bad about committing genocide on Native Americans and enslaving Africans, and otherwise treating people of color like dog do. That's bad. The pending turnover the road decision is so men can feel powerful again. And this list, I'm telling you, it will grow and get worse. All right. Now, over the last 40 years, I have done many things to turn back the white supremacists. During the agricultural crisis, and the farm crisis of the early and mid-90s, 1890s, 80s, we conducted two-day trainings sessions for farmer and rural clergy in Ohio and Wyoming and Texas to North Carolina, everywhere. We put 1,500 people through these trainings, and they became our eyes, our ears, and our hands in rural communities. It was a massive undertaking, and it worked. It worked, and we empowered some of the more progressive groups, which signed on to the Jesse Jackson campaign, among other things. In the 1990s, as white power rock began to grow, we began the process, along with working with several other groups in other countries, of shutting down their music production after we had spent months tracking back their music to foreign lands. And I was involved in suing a Klan group in Blakely, Georgia, which had grown to include firemen and let black homes burn and people died. We won that case. And at every moment, at every time, we stood up and said no. In fact, that is what we did the most of. It worked. It worked. There's not enough of us standing up and saying no. But we're going to have to do much, much more today. We're going to have to sue. We're going to have to trace back their roots. We're going to have to do all the things that I just said and say no. We're going to have to do more, much more. So we're going to have to get involved in the fight over vaccines, masks, and regulations. If we don't do it, they win completely. Because the government cannot win that fight by itself. We're going to have to get our hands dirty. And if we don't do it, we'll lose. I just want to say next year, voting rights will be an issue. There's the King family is getting involved in some of the other Black organizations are doing that. Immigration will be an issue next year. The anti-immigrants will make it an issue. Every one of us will have to get involved in these. So look for a new report for around the 1 year anniversary of January 6th. That's from WWIREHR. It will tell us how far we have to go.
Thank you. Leonard Zeskin, we're going to take a break here before we get to the questions. And the forum will be back also next Sunday, and with our annual tradition of Soapbox Sunday, where we basically offer an open mic to the public to sign up and give your 5 minutes worth on your personal burning issues of the day. And so now to get on the playlist, you need to send an email to Craig Volland, that's at heartwood2@kc.rr.com. That's Heartwood, HARTWOOD, the number 2 at kc.rr.com. Okay, so it looks like George is first up.
Yes, as you might suspect, liberals have a tendency to want to avoid gunfire and use of guns. And yet the other side seems to be real familiar and desire the use of weapons and want to arm themselves for all sorts of reasons. But do you see, I've been hearing of some comments about what a civil war is going to come. Washington Post has a big article about the civil war pending. But we've also seen these light sentences. Do you see a civil war more run by money and courts than guns?
No, who knows what it'll be. I saw a civil war, but it might be out in the culture and out in politics. White supremacy is violent, and for non-white people, it's particularly violent. And there's never a time that the white supremacists are not violent. But that doesn't mean it's the only thing that they will do. There's many tendencies in this movement. And some will be in the courts and what you said, but some won't. And right now, it's being fought out in the pickets and the protests against the vaccines and way away from the courts. So I don't know which way it's going to go. And I think people that presume to know are full of beans.
Okay, thank you. Now, Ethan, you're up.
Hey, so I'm someone who's been to different anti-fascist and anti-racist demonstrations, but one thing that people have always criticized about that is they say that we shouldn't counter protest. We should just stay inside and they'll go away on their own. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
We should stay inside. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. There's an idea that it's not worth counter protesting or confronting, and that we just shouldn't pay them any attention. Which is not what I
That doesn't work. Not
Okay.
paying them attention does not work. All it does is give them space to grow. And we have to get active. We have to get out in the streets, and we have to get active between each other. We have to build up a movement of our own to save democracy. And look, there's a lot of people who say, don't do nothing. Doing nothing doesn't work. Never has and never will.
Okay, Carol.
Yeah, I thought it was particularly important that you were talking about we can't sit back and expect the government to take on and solve the issues. Maybe George Baggett would use the expression, that's what liberals did. We too often do expect, oh, okay, government's going to take care of that. I think that's probably true for the three issues you mentioned, or even more as they come up. But we should be thinking about the ways that we can take action and talk about the issues that are important. So you mentioned talking about the line getting too thin. What are the ways we can thicken the line? I assume there's some folks that are too far gone, but how do we thicken the line and draw the line deeper to prevent further people getting engaged in their movement?
We have to come out in favor of vaccines. I wouldn't be opposed to a demonstration or a march that was pro-vaccine, pro-mask, and pro-regulations. We have to build up momentum. Look, we lost Roe. We're going to lose Roe because people relied on the government to solve these things for them. The federal government was going to protect abortion rights, reproductive rights, and it hasn't. And they're taking over. And we have to fight it. And we have to fight it in our workplaces. We have to fight it in our churches. We have to fight it and on the streets. So that's what I think will thicken the line. What will thicken the line is if we get active. And you'll know whether you're being active simply because others will be there too.
Okay, I guess Nathan.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess my question is sort of about the issue of organizing, and just wondered if, given your years of experience in tracking the white supremacist movement, what do you think is their most powerful tool or issue that they have for recruiting and organizing that we should be paying attention to?
Well, right now it's the vaccines and the masks. That's their most important. 6 months from now, it won't be. 6 months, it'll be immigration or some other issue. Look, they didn't know that the vaccines and the masks were going to be their most important area of growth, but it is now, and they're paying attention to it. And they're out there when the people go down to Union Station and have a protest. They're there, they're organizing, they're talking, and 6 months from now, it'll be something different. And I'll let you know. You got to stay. This is not something that stays the same. This is something where you're going to have to pay attention to the website, get active, and just keep changing as the road gets rocky. And believe me, it's going to get rockier. That's the main thing that you have to realize. White people do not like to share. The vast majority of white people do not like to share. And They're holding on to what they got.
Hey, and if I could put in a question here, Leonard. Well, hold on. We'll go. George's got a question. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, Leonard, I actually, it's more of a comment, but what do you think about like this example of this realtor from Texas who claimed she was so white and blonde and she was going to be, there's nothing, nobody could touch her. And then suddenly she's lost her license. She's in jail and she's lost her realtor license in Texas. So the economic condition of fighting this system and being such an aberrant person doesn't have, it has some consequences to some individuals who think they're untouchable. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree. You can get punished for look, I just laid out the Charlottesville and the January 6th thing. The guys that got involved in that are being punished. And there are those that are not. Look, a militia is a private army. Private armies are against the law in most states. I haven't seen one of them prosecuted.
Well, to follow up there, this thing in Florida where DeSantis was thinking he was going to use the National Guard and then told he couldn't do so. I mean, there are some positive things happening.
You take them to court. You charge them. It's a state offense to run a private army, and they're running private armies.
There you go.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this one out. You just got to be willing to fight. If you don't fight, you lose. That's it.
Well, so you were talking about, the situation that's out there. It seems like that we are, and this is Joe. I have a question here. We're in a really bad state now, as you've laid out. It seems to be a really dark time. The concerns of civil war and all these things. Now, could we be at the peak though? I mean, what makes you think that it's going to get worse, or could we be at the worst? Is there a chance that things could be easing up, or we could be turning anything around, or why do you
think they're going to get worse? They're not easing up. You have the typical liberal. I want to win, but I don't want to work. I'm sorry, Joe, but it doesn't work that way. And look, it's getting bad now, but in 2042, white people will be a minority, and in this nation of minorities, we're going to have to learn how to share, or there's going to be trouble. And there's going to be trouble.
And I was at that. My wife said I could throw her on the bus. She's listening. She wanted me to ask that question for her. But
look, everybody wants to figure out how can we escape this without having to fight it, and it doesn't work. It does not work. Those people in Charlottesville that put all those organizations on the rockets. 4 years they put that lawsuit together. They raised money. They scoured they did their work. And that was a private organization that did that. And we don't know what's going to happen in January on the January 6th stuff. We know it's that what the Democrats are doing is right. It has had an effect on Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, who initially opposed the January 6th commission, just came out and said that what they're doing is interesting and is good, and we should publicize what they're saying. Just happened. We're going to have to fight, and we're going to have to try and win. But there's no predetermined winning. Doesn't work that way. Sorry.
And Ethan has another question. Go ahead.
And so we've talked a lot about, and rightfully so, about the groups involved with January 6th. But what about groups like Adam Waffen Division or Patriot Front and Thomas Rousseau, kind of these groups beyond the Trump movement? Do you see them as a threat?
No, they're part of, look, I didn't mention Adam Waffen because they're small, but they exist. And there's more organizations out there. There's the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, which is headquartered in Harrison, Arkansas. just across the border, and has members all across the southwest corner of the state, and a Dixie shop in Branson. The son of the founder of that Klan outfit has a shop in Branson. Look, there's a lot of organizations out there. And we're gonna have to find them all. And we're gonna have to get smart. Sorry.
Julie has a question. Julie, unmute. Unmute your microphone, Julie.
I can't hear you, Julie.
Hi, Lenny. Thanks for your talk. Well, this is a big question, but I wonder if you could just give us a very general idea of what rural training would look like now, given what you said about how the primary issues are changing. And right now it's the vaccines and masks, but next it'll be immigration. What is there?
What we've been doing
a model there that we could start thinking about to get out into rural areas?
I'm not sure I would do a 2-day to start with, first of all, because people have things to do. And 2 days is hard. But we've been working with vaxxer groups. There's a coalition of vaccine groups that we've been working with, and we've been speaking at their meetings. We're gonna have to team up with them and team up with others and other organizations, and we're gonna have to come together in a variety of organizations, get together and hold a couple of trainings and see if we can develop a model. And we're gonna have to teach that people the science of vaccines. We're gonna have to teach people about white supremacy. We're gonna have to teach them how to fight it. And we're gonna have to teach people how to stand up in their own community. We've already been doing some of it, some in the Northwest, particularly. I want to do it this coming year in Missouri. And I've got plans to put together a couple of things in Missouri with other organizations. And if you want to do one where you are, we'll be glad to help. So just let me know.
All right, George has another question.
Yeah, I hate to be the one questioning everything.
I'm glad.
The articles that another article in the Washington Post talked about the infiltration of white supremacists in the military, and that they're surprised by how much is there, and that one of the suggestions is that they start forcing the military to take civics classes. How do you see a possibility of civics classes in other parts of the United States to essentially help people
I think
become
so.
familiar? But the military, what do you think of the military doing this? I mean,
listen, when I speak in Germany, I did I've done more than one speaking tour in Germany. And I was stopped with the crew of us that were doing it. We're stopped at a former camp. I forget which one in Germany. It was a concentration camp. It wasn't a killing camp. It was a concentration camp. There were troops there from Holland, Netherlands. And they were required as part of their basic training to go to the Holocaust museums and see what had happened when they had let themselves get kicked in the butt. I'm not opposed to civics classes if they're anti-racist classes and include this. It's not the first time this stuff has shown up in the services. In the mid 80s, they had weapons coming off of Fort Carson, off of in Georgia, going into the movement. This, the Washington Post might be new to that reporter, but it ain't new. And look, the military is the most integrated institution in the world, and those black soldiers are going to stop this shit when it starts. So that's my feeling about it. And I'm glad to see it when it happens.
And then when you mentioned the military, there's one thing I wanted to clarify, Leonard, if I could, this is Joe, if I could step in. Because did I hear you right that of the January 6th arrests or that 80% had military experience? Did I hear that right?
81%, 12% had 81 individuals, 12% had military experience.
Oh, okay, I see. And the
look, the Oath Keepers was a militia that had former police officers, and military people in it. 30,000 of them. There's a lot of shit out there. Excuse my French. There's a lot of the individuals who have military experience. Fort Bragg is a mess. Fort Bragg is a mess. And not the only mess, but we got problems. It's not going to be in society as a whole and not be in the service.
And now, did you say that the Proud, but however the membership of Proud Boys and Oath Keepers has been declining? And then you mentioned, I didn't quite catch the other group that you said that had now 33,000 members and 360 in Missouri. Could you kind of clarify that again for me?
The Oath Keepers have lost members. The Proud Boys have not lost members or have not lost substantially members, because what they've done is break up into a series of local organizations, and they're very active in the vaccines. Yes. That's what the Proud Boys are doing. Vaccines, masks, and regulations, and school boards active to put the so-called critical race theory, which is a bunch of horseshit. They want to get race out of the schools, and they're doing it. So, is that the question?
Yeah, that was one. And then also, what was the group that has now 33,000 members?
That's the People's Rights Network. Grew from 24 to 33,000 in less than 2 years. DSA hadn't done that. DSA has grown fast, but it hasn't grown like that. And DSA doesn't fight. Not on this issue. They like to vote.
And you mentioned the school board situation. I mean, what do you know about that? Because yes, there's been.
It's a local issue. It's happening all across Kansas and Missouri, and fights on the school board. It's not rocket science. We know about it. You know about it if you read your newspaper. You don't read your newspaper. Am I right?
Right. No, well, I'm aware of the school board fights, and so I was wondering if there's any strategies. I mean, and where else? I mean, what are the school boards, vaccines? I mean, it's just amazing. I guess is there any way to approach the school board situation?
The school board is elected. They're getting on the school board because you're too busy watching instead of getting involved. Easy crud.
George has a question.
Yeah, again, we had the critical race theory on the forum last week, and I asked a question about the the educators that were presenting the issue about the multiphasic aspect of the understanding of critical race theory and the history of like the Tulsa event and all of it. Is that the school boards, the Texas school book folks, they have an integrated approach to maintaining the lie or the approach to understanding the history of the United States. And do you? It seems to me also that you're talking about us getting involved in the vaccine thing. Would it actually? It makes more sense to me, and maybe you, that we go to focus on school boards. We go to look at curriculums. Because basically the way they gain members is through ignorance.
Do it in good health. Get active on the school board issue. You do that, and I'll do the other, and we'll talk together, and we'll fight this fight. Don't decide now which one is more important.
I'm not deciding that. I'm just saying that we need an integrated approach to it all. Is that?
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
And I have a question back on the vaccine situation, because on one hand, there's this stress that the vaccine situation became politicized, and while there is the
yes, it is being politicized, and we should help that forward. It's a public health issue. It's a public health issue.
The same as I think that the reaction of people to vaccines has been to try to take it out of that politicization and make it this is a public health issue that we all should be invested in. And when you talk about protest, do you want to make it more like a political counter protest, or is there a way to do this while still trying to take at least couch your perception that no, we are not wanting to politicize this. We're wanting to make this the common good. And is there a risk that
the common good? I'm all in favor of the common good. I'm all in favor of the common good. What are you afraid of?
I'm just wondering and I might not. Okay, well, I'm just wondering if how
these liberals are just afraid. That's the shame of it. I'm sorry about that.
Hey, Leonard, you may underestimate somebody like me. I'm not afraid of anything, and
Who are you?
I'm George Baggett.
Oh, hey, George.
And so let me open up my picture then I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I'm fully capable of taking on things. But the issues that, like today's New York Times had an article about, should we be recommending vaccine cards for air travel? And I say yes. I've been doing some air travel lately, and here's a minor battle that could be taken on by liberals and the people you're suggesting take on vaccine issues, is if we stopped air travel by those who don't have vaccination cards, that could have a major impact on this thing in the military. The military also has a fairly high vaccination rate because of the mandate, and they got rid of some guys that refused to get their vaccination, and it was a fairly small amount. So I'm looking at that kind of battle as being the way to go about it.
It's fine with me. Thank you, George.
Okay.
Look, if I'm for whichever way you want to do it. If you
the issue for me is that as I'm getting older, I'm looking for young people to start picking up the other end of the tube for.
Yeah, and so am I. I got a young person that's my assistant at the Institute, 25 years old. Whew. That seems young to me. When I was 25, I thought I was an old man. Over. I'm old. I know it.
And and since this is Joe again, and I'll add another question here. And I do read my newspaper, The Star, and Dave Helling, columnist, recently he just declared that the American democracy is over. He says, like, the American democracy has ended, and he took it all the way back. It actually began 9/11. That 9/11 was really the end of the American democracy, and now we're seeing it come to fruition that that it's broken. Is it broken? Is there anything, what's redeemable about where our democracy is right now?
Well, I don't think it's over. We got a fight on our hands. That's all. We got a fight on our hands. It isn't over. If it was over, it would be something else. We don't have that. It's not over. And Dave Helling doesn't know what's going on anyway.
Well, we have to continue this discussion because in a way it's like when the problem I see with the liberals and the experience is that when 9/11 occurred and we saw these encroachments on our civil liberties, we were all opposed to what was going on, or many of us were. And yet now we're having to kind of go back and rethink this because we were attacked by what the mandates of travel and TSA and the things that we historically were opposed to, the idea of restrictions, and now we're benefiting from them. So we're having to kind of change focus, don't you think?
Well, some people are. I've been sort of at it the same way. I believe that there's a three-corner battle. There's us, whoever us is. There's the fascists on the other side of the street. And there's the internationalists, that's us. There's the nationalists, that's the other team. And there's the state in the middle. It's a three-way battle. And it's not a two-way battle.
No.
And I'm used to a two-way battle, thinking, well, class war, blah, blah, blah. But it ain't there. It ain't there. And look, there's people organizing poor people. There's people organizing poor people who are workers in this city who matter. They matter. And the workers, the fast food workers, they matter. And whoever wins this, whoever wins for them, wins this.
And Leonard, Joey, I'm curious, so the 79 essentially is when this started. What motivated you? How did you get started into this line of work in the first place? And then what were you expecting then? Is this where could you imagine where we are now when you started? How did you get started 40 years ago? And then can you imagine where we are now back then?
Well, at the time, there was an uptick in the Klan in the late 70s. There was an uptick in the Klan in the South. And I paid attention to the South. And George Baggett is right. Surely there's other questions. And I got involved in it from that standpoint. I didn't think we would be here, but I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know where we were going. And I didn't know how the fight was going to go. And I'd be damned if I could predict today what it's going to be like 10 years from now, when I'll be dead. So, help.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Okay, well, again, you've made the point, you've made the statement that I've been talking about for so long, is that I'd never expected to be 74 years old and having to deal with some of the crap that we're talking about today.
Who did? I thought we'd win.
I thought
1968, I thought we would win.
when I returned from the war, I really thought liberals had a big upper hand, and I've been sorely disappointed by the lack of action and the idea that somebody else can do the job. And my friend Craig Vollen and I have worked on environmental issues, and one of our biggest complaints is somebody that has a great idea to tell us, you know, you should do this and you should do that. And our response is, well, that'd be a great idea. That you should take that on. Oh, but I'm not a person that does things. I'm just an idea person. I figured you might have a thought to that comment.
Well, we need more people to do things.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Next Sunday, we're going to have the Soapbox Sunday, and this is your chance to get anyone to get on and spend about 5 minutes talking about what's important to you. And you do that by emailing Craig Volland at hartwood2@kc.rr.com. That's Hartwood, HARTWOOD 2, the number 2 at kcrr.com. That's next Sunday's forum. This Sunday we had Leonard Zeskin, the human rights activist and author, and we're talking about white supremacy, and it's been a great conversation. And I want to thank you, Leonard, and thank everybody.